ziua, doamnelor și domnilor! Bine v-am găsit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Observatori la Parlamentul European. Invitatul de astăzi este Luis Garicano, eurodeputat spaniol, membru al grupului Renew Europe. De an bun, Luis Garicano a promovat activ reformele structurale în instituțiile și economia spaniolă, în special pe piața muncii și în sistemele de sănătate și pensii. Activismul său este adesea comparat cu cel al activiștilor lui José Ortega y Gasset. Mr. Garicano, you are a member of a Spanish party, Ciudadanos. What is the political orientation of this party?
Ciudadanos is a progressive liberal party that has a strong belief in the need for two halves that are the European model to work together to make a whole, which are a market economy that provides the resources for the social, for the welfare state, and a welfare state that is successful and that provides the safety net for the market economy. So we believe that you need those two things working in harmony. Strong market, and strong state that is actually able to protect the citizens.
It's an idea coming from London School of Economics because Tony Blair had a program, political program, the Third Way.
Yes, I would say
you are a professor.
I am a professor I was a professor at the LC for many years, and before at Chicago, and it's true that I was behind the program of Ciudadanos, but I would say these ideas come in part from the Third Way, but also come from all the liberal tradition that is behind for so many years, including particularly for me, John Stuart Mill.
But in this case, Renew Europe, what kind of group is?
So Renew Europe has parties that span all the liberal tradition, from more conservative liberals who are like the Dutch liberals, who are more on the side of the free market and care maybe less about strong social safety net, to more left-leaning liberals like maybe the also a Dutch party, D66. And Marx, for example, which is part of Renew Europe, they wouldn't like the liberal label much, but they are more or less within that. There are people in Marx that are more on the center-right and more on the center-left. We span all the center-left and center-right, but we have one thing, all of us, in common. We're strong believers in Europe as the solution to many of the problems, in a Europe that listens to the citizens, a Europe that is really responsive and that solves the problems of the citizens, not a Europe that is philosophical and distant. We believe in practical solutions, in solving people's problems, in transparency and regeneration, in fighting against corruption, in creating a center consensus where dialogue really is the rule, where everybody can come together.
That remember me an essay, The End of the History. You know very well the essay.
Francis Fukuyama. Yeah.
Francis Fukuyama. So he assisted of the end of the history in this case?
It's very interesting, right? Because Fukuyama basically, and your reference is really precise indeed, Fukuyama basically says the liberal consensus, which involves capitalism and democracy, has triumphed and is going to triumph forever. His point is really a prediction about the future, which actually turned out to be wrong, because we see now in many places populism, authoritarianism, resurgence. Democracy is under siege. So while we would be within the mainstream tradition of the West, I wouldn't be just optimistic and say, well, there is no risk to it. I think, in fact, that democracy and liberalism are under threat.
In this case, why we see growing up the populism in European Union?
I think there are two reasons. One is the growing anxiety of the middle class with technological change and globalization. Many people are not sure that their kids are going to be better off than they were. They're not sure that the future will be better than the past. They're scared about the future. And that has to do with digitalization destroying many middle-class jobs, from bank clerks to people working in supermarkets. There are many jobs that go away, and also with globalization. And then there's a second source, I think, which is the fact that the European Union hasn't been perceived as providing solutions to the problems. In the two big crises we have seen in the past, one more affecting Romania, the other less, migration and the euro crisis, people have perceived the European Union as not able to really solve people's problems, but in some sense even making them worse.
You studied at San Jose School, a Jesuit school,
Yes.
in your hometown, Valladolid. The Pope was the head of the Jesuits. Do you know him personally?
No, I haven't met him, even though he's a Jesuit and Argentinian. So that would be interesting, but I have never met him. I indeed studied from when I was 6 years old to 18 years old with the Jesuits, and I'm sure something remains of that.
How important is religion for you?
I'm not a religious person. I have been given a religious education, a religious upbringing, and I think that there is a lot in the Christian religious tradition that has been infusing the European project. As you know, many Demo-Christians were behind the founders. I think there are the traditions of Demo-Christians, liberals, and socialists, which are the main three traditions that sustain the European project.
In 2012, you were part of a commission of 11 experts to reform the Spanish university system. What is the key to success for efficient higher education?
I think that the trick for a country like Romania or for a country like Spain is not to try to invent anything, to see what works. And what works in higher education are the Anglo-Saxons, the Swiss, etc. systems. What do they have? It's very simple. Three things. Universities have a lot of autonomy to recruit, to offer the programs they want, to take the students they want, to get the teachers they want. Autonomy. But with autonomy has to have an evaluation system that allows citizens to know what universities are doing with that money. And the financial rewards, and that's the third, all the money that goes to universities has to depend on that second, on the evaluation. So if a university teaches well, enriches it well, then the evaluation should show that, and then the money should flow to those universities that are doing good teaching and good research. That's how it works in the Anglo-Saxon work, and that's how it has worked in every successful university system.
But in continental model is not the same situation.
You're right. There are many civil service continental models where professors are civil servants. I think those models tend to be less successful because research requires that people take risks and look for their best ideas, and that the best ideas get the money, and not everybody gets the same, right? A socialist university system where everybody gets the same is a system where the good ideas are not rewarded. University systems in continental Europe that have been moving towards this Anglo-Saxon model, I would say, are in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, in France, and even in Germany there has been some movement with some universities getting additional resources. I think the trick to join the two systems is additionality, to say, we're going to let every university function by the civil service system of the past, but we're going to direct some resources to the universities that are able to keep a better research and teaching level.
Perhaps from Anglo-Saxon world, the best model is in the United States, but they have very important companies, big companies with big money. In Europe, I don't think we have the same situation.
No, it's really a big sign of European failure that if you look at the 70s, you look at the top 30 companies in the world, many of those companies will be European. You would have the oil and gas companies, you would have banks, you would have even electronics companies. If you look today at European top companies, at world top companies, there's not a single European one. If you look at technological companies, which is the most clear example, you will see that of the 20 top internet companies, 11 are American and 9 are Chinese. None of them are Europeans. So, but I think it's very related to your previous question. The university system has to be producing ideas, innovations, research, and then we have to have a system to fund those ideas. In the US, they have both. They have universities in both coasts, MIT, Stanford, that produce lots of good ideas, and then they have a venture capital system that funds these ideas and allows these companies to grow.
In this case, why Europe is not a power in 5G technology?
I think that it has to do a lot with what we are saying. It has to do both with the ability to innovate and patent, So where are the top universities now? China, US. Who has all the patents on this? Huawei, I mean, American and US and Chinese companies. And it also has to do with a single market, right? We don't really have a single market in services. We were very good at creating a single market for goods, manufacturing, cars, moving around. When you go to services such as banks and communication, it's all national. These are national companies, national boundaries, national regulators. Yes, we've stopped roaming, but we still have a bill in Spain and one in Brussels. We don't really have European companies. And without those economies of scale, it's very hard to pay for the research.
You wrote a very interesting article about organization and inequality in the knowledge economy. Why was Europe clearly overwhelmed in the case of CG? I repeat the question because I don't understand.
The truth is, we have, in many of these service aspects, we have 27 or 28 markets, and the UK is gone. We have all these separate markets. Think of banks. Banks were 10 years ago, there were some multinational European banks. Now, after the crisis, instead of having more of they talk about capital markets union, but the truth is, instead of having banks which are more global, we have banks which are more national. The banks that were trying to be international, Deutsche Bank, ING, BNP Paribas, all these banks have little by little, UniCredito, come back to their own countries. So we need a single market for services, and we don't have that.
Let's get to the economic problems. You are professor of economics at London School of Economics and Political Science.
I have been until a short while. Now I'm really a MEP.
How do you see the European economy from this perspective as former professor?
I see it as just about to suffer potentially a very big shock, and it's a trade shock. It's a trade contraction that is affecting primarily Germany first, and then through Germany it might spread to all the other countries. The basic problem that we have is that a lot of investments by all companies have been created for a single market worldwide. They make this component in China, this component in Romania, this component in England. As the trade war takes place and new trade barriers come up between China and the US and Europe, and also within Europe with Brexit, many of these investments are not worth anything. And when all these investments depreciate, when all these investments become useless, then you have a crisis. Every economic crisis is due to, in a particular moment, you have made a bet on the future, you thought the future was going to be there, and it's there. And all the investments you made for that future are not worth very much in this other future. So if you think of the real estate crisis, everybody thought, oh, we can invest in housing, it's going to be all this housing demand, it's not there. If you think of the crisis in Latin America or Russia in the late 90s, that was the same thing. And if you think of the oil crisis in the 70s, 80s, everything was made for cheap gasoline. And when gasoline becomes expensive, then suddenly all of these investments that you've made, big cars, etc., you have to throw them away. And now the investments have been made for a lot of trade. And now trade is going to be decreasing because of the trade war that President Trump has started.
How do you see the future of the European Union in this case, with possible crisis? We don't have the budget in this moment for European Union.
I am worried. I mean, until now, most of the load has been carried by the European Central Bank. Europe hasn't really made its homework, and the governments haven't really done their part. Governments like in Spain, in Romania, and all other places, they need to do reforms to be ready for the future, and they're not doing them. And the governments in the north need to invest in the future, like governments in Germany, etc. Neither one nor the other has really made the homework, and now it's the moment for the governments in the northern countries to invest, and for the countries in the southern countries and in the eastern countries to reform.
I read a very interesting article about euro, unfinished business.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The euro, we've done a lot in the crisis, but there are two or three things that haven't yet been done. The euro doesn't have a common deposit protection scheme that allows all depositors, independent of whether they're German or Portuguese, to be sure that their money is protected by the whole Eurozone. So each country has their own deposit insurance scheme. And the risk of that is that if in a country there is a crisis and they don't have enough money, then that banking system is going to be in trouble and drag down the whole country. That's the European Deposit Insurance Scheme. We also don't have yet a budget for the Eurozone that allows us to have some policies that allow to cushion the shocks in the Eurozone.
Yes, the budget for Eurozone, only for Eurozone, it's very difficult to be accepted.
Yes, no,
because
absolutely.
we'll have two Europe in that moment.
Yes, I can see that many countries would be worried, but it's also true that if you have a common currency, you don't only have a monetary policy, but you need a fiscal policy as well, and we don't have that.
You are alternative rapporteur for opinion for general budget of the European Union for the financial year 2020. You have recently made some recommendations on the future budget of the European Union. What are these recommendations?
Basically, our group, Renew, has said that the European Union needs to make sure that we have enough money for environmental policies, that we have enough money for digitalization. Those are our priorities. We have made several amendments, in particular for the environment. For me, one thing that is very important is as we make investments in improving the environment and fighting climate change, we need to be sure that neither citizens who need more the car, for example, nor countries that have made less investment in the past are left behind. So for us, it's a priority that the investments that Europe can make are oriented to helping those countries and those citizens contribute to the climate, to the fight against climate change.
You are also a member of the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee. What are the fundamental changes related to the structure of the European Union budget for the next term? Changing, referring to the agriculture, cohesion funds?
Well, the big thing that we have now coming is a new multi-annual financial framework. It's not just that we now have to start discussing next term, but the big thing that's going to happen is we have to start discussing the budget for 7 years. And so that's going to provide a framework for all the European Union. What I think we need to do is we need to prepare Europe for the future. And the priorities have to be to make sure that our agriculture is sustainable and works for the small farmers and for the sustainability of all agriculture in all countries. We need to work for the digitalization of the European economy. It's not just in the digital sector. This happens in every sector. We need to think of everything from small farms to shops to companies. We have a digital revolution. Europe is falling behind. But also the skills of workers. European workers don't have the digital skills for the future. So Europe has to be providing skills, has to be providing investments to make sure that we can compete in the future. So, as I was telling you before, our companies and our workers are right now not able to compete in these frontier technologies.
You are also a member of the delegation for South America. How do you appreciate the agreement signed, the former commission with South America? Because I saw many people concerned about this agreement.
There are complaints, like there is always complaints when there's any agreement, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Europe. It's a fantastic opportunity for Latin America. We are a trading economy, we are an open economy, we are an economy that needs to open up to that is open up to the world and needs to open up to new countries. And we have countries there that are going to grow a lot and are going to be very much demanding our products. So from every perspective, it's a positive agreement. And you are right that some people have been worried about environmental aspects, forests, fires in the Amazon, etc. I don't think we need to worry about that. Well, I think we need to worry about the fires, but I don't think we need to worry about the impact of the agreement on them, because the fires are happening without the agreement. The agreement gives Europe tools to actually reduce that kind of problem.
The European Parliament has recently adopted a resolution on the situation in Hong Kong. What provisions does this resolution contain?
I mean, Hong Kong is, I actually visit Hong Kong almost every year to teach. And Hong Kong is a jewel. I mean, what the European Parliament is trying to do is to put the focus of the world in the violations of human rights that are taking place and to demand real change there. I mean, I think that this is a situation where a lot of people are suffering, and where Europe needs to show their solidarity with them.
This resolution, it's against, if you like or if you don't like, against China. What's the value of such a statement?
I mean, I
The
honestly
power.
think you're right. The power imbalance is huge. China is very strong. But I think that Europe and the US have to realize that China, what they thought about China, which is very related to your first question about the end of history, or your second question, is wrong. We all thought China little by little would become democratic, and you just need to trade with them and they will become democratic. That's not happening. The truth of the matter is China has grown stronger economically at the same time as it has gone backwards in its freedoms. And I think we have to change our stance towards China and just be more demanding.
Don't you think China it's another model, not a third way, a fourth way?
China is an old model. This is, I mean,
It's a
countries have been authoritarian in the past, and they have grown from authoritarian to democratic. To now put China as the future, I think is very absurd. Chinese citizens want freedom, and we see it in Hong Kong.
Mr. Deputy, thank you very much.
That is really a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.